Hello everyone, we are back with another virtual session of InfoSec Girls. So today we have another speaker, Uma. Before starting, I would like to introduce her. She has a IT career of more than 20 years and includes significant experience as a leader, coach, and organizational information systems security at various companies including Capital One, GOI, and many more. So I would like her to introduce more about herself. Over to you, Uma, and yeah, all the best for the session.
All right. Thank you, guys. Let me see if I can. Can you guys hear me okay? All right. So thank you, Priyam, for the lively intro. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. It depends on wherever you are. As we celebrate the Teachers' Day in India today, first I'd like to thank Vandana and InfoSec Girls for the opportunity to share my journey on the topic of insider threats. As Priyam said, my name is Rajagopal. I started my career back in 1994 in a telecom company as an R&D engineer and moved to USA back in 1998 for an Y2K projects. Since then, I have operated under various roles, from starting from developers to third-party management to application security governance, auditing, and into information security now. Coached and mentored many high schoolers, newbies, and very active in the community now. I'm passionate about this industry, especially the woman in cyber provides me excitement. What an incredible journey, Gunjan, prior speaker of today's session. And Sushma, another speaker of today's session, she was on the spot on the file upload vulnerability. All right, let's get into the meat of the program. I made my deck a little colorful, so hopefully you like it. And let's see if I can share my screen now. All right. I hope you guys are seeing my screen. All right, the human element of cyber risk and insider threat. A little bit of intro we went over. I'm going to skip that. And let's go over to agenda. So what is it? And who they are? And what are their motives? And how do we detect them? If there is an incident, how do we contain and recover? What are the best measures and countermeasures? And if you have any questions, then we will talk at the end. All right. Let's go over to what the insider threats are. If I have to ask who the insider threats are, 70% of the time, I get an answer that is a disgruntled employee. Yes, they are part of the problem, but there's a lot more. Accidental insider, they're just that. Accidentally disclose information that affect one or all aspects of confidentiality, integrity, and availability of the system. These people inside your organization who work in good faith but accidentally disclose information. Let's move on to competitors. Competitor install some insiders or collude with somebody already in the organization to get information that provides them competitive advantage. Then let's look at chief and organized crime. Chief, their motive is driven by the motive of crime. They want to steal for their own profit. They often associated with organized gang members and try to cause an incredible amount of damage to your organization. Terrorism and terrorist actors are becoming more common these days, in particularly damaging national infrastructure, such as metro system or energy industries. Nation state is another insider category, can be high level collusion and sophisticated insider attacks. So it's just not disgruntled employees. We have a lot more to consider. Let's talk about why this is important. Now we know different types of insiders. Let's look at how extensive problems are. It is common that a lot of insider attacks are not even recognized until there is a major breach. Now, let's look at some numbers here. About 20 to 30% of breaches are coming from insider, according to Panama survey in 2020. The incident increase is about 47% since 2018. The databases are the main target for them. This is because insider attackers are explicitly given access to the network and to the information within your organization. They are inherently trusted to work on your system and access data. Secondly, insiders have a significant advantage over external attack because they know your ecosystem, how it works, what the policies are, what kind of monitoring tools you have, and who can give access to what data. This information is typically not known by external attackers. And the time to detect is typically much longer for the insider attacks. That's why the scale of breadth is more larger than external attacks. All right. So this is why it is really important to know what the actors are and what they could do to the system. Let's talk about the motive. Let's talk about the motive of the insider attacks. Why would they do that, right? What causes them to do this? There are several. Let's talk about personal gain. An employee may be moving from one company to the another as part of career, for example, and they may take some data through USB stick, exploring data or other means. This would give them personal gain over the new job that they are taking. If you talk about financial gain, which is common among insider attacks, they are looking to monetize some of their privilege and access they have. They are working for the company. So whether it is selling data to dark web or undertaking some fraudulent activities by changing some kind of code to transfer a miniature amount of cash to their bank account. So these are related to financial gain. Let's talk about revenge. This is because they are not getting promotion or they were put on performance plan or maybe a small dispute to your coworker. So this often comes up with the disgruntled employee in the organization. All right, political gain. This is something that we are seeing recently, especially the world we are living, especially in the U.S. The insider wants to impact the outcome of some political process to achieve certain goals. In this case, financial gain is not their motive, but they want to just impact the political landscape. Espionage is another activity or motive, and not to forget, it could be fun. Some people thrive for thrills. So another most common one is accidental error, no motive at all. So what interests them? Of course, the sensitive data, right, and the health data. And you could get information about high-profile contact details or business proposals. It could be a company secret. So a lot of them, which is considered classified, interest them. Basically, knowing what the actors are and what their motives and interest them is half the solution, the very important half of it. All right, let's look at a few examples here. Malicious insider, right? It is intentional, basically. So the one that thing comes into my mind is Edward Snowden. It's a source of NSA leaks at 2013, happened in 2013. So what happened was NSA taped directly into the servers of internet firms that they're not supposed to. Snowden just used the SSH vulnerability to gain access to the data or server that he's not supposed to. So this is a classic example for malicious insider. Let's talk about accidental example. Some common examples are basically insiders are work with utmost faith, trying to do a good job. Their intent is not malicious, but whenever they make mistake, which leads to a security incident. So placing, for example, placing a backup file or database files in a wrong location, which could be publicly accessible. They are not password protected or it might not be access controlled. Another common example is a misconfiguration of servers. So people think that you have a deny all, but it misconfigured to allow all, which probably would put them in danger. Um, Another common example is if you are trying to install some software and you're still using default user ID and password, then again, you have a vulnerability right there for someone to take advantage of. And another common one I can think of is production data copied to test purposes, something that can happen quite commonly. This activity is against a certain data protection laws, depending on which location you are in. It also increases the exposure of the data breach. There is frequently multiple copies of developments and tests, and frequently the access control around test environment is not strictly as it is in production. All right, let's talk about, I forgot to mention why, right? So why would they do that? It may be because it's lack of training. Sorry about this. A lack of training, or maybe it's awareness, not, my mouse is doing something bad here. All right. So lack of training, and maybe it's a misunderstanding of risk, or probably lazy that they did not want to mask, for example, did not want to mask the data because it's time consuming, right? Let's talk about another example, thief and nation state. In this example, I'm going to talk about Europe, specifically Germany. It occurred in 2012. The German department wanted to get information about German customers of the Swiss bank because they think that they're evading or avoiding taxation by not paying Germany government. So the German authorities colluded with an insider in Swiss bank in order to get data, which is the 3 CDs of worth of data of German customers. So basically, it is an insider data theft. So the Swiss insider got arrested. This is interesting because Germany was defending the use of this insider attack. They say that is nothing wrong. And again, most recently in 2017, they continued. The Swiss spied on German Ministry for Tax scandal. They were looking for some tax leaks. They also got arrested. So this is a classic example of how a thief and nation state come together to do an insider attack, right? The major one I want to talk about is external insider. Again, this is oxymoron. Any external entity that have a legitimate access to your infrastructure and network are all considered as external insider. Third-party vendors, contractor, non-employees basically, and you have support systems and the partners, subsidiaries, and customers. Sometimes customers, for whatever reason, who have share the access to part of your network infrastructure, might be external insider. Basically, whoever is external to your organization, who have access to your system, are considered external insider. So I want to talk about this example, Target, that happened in 2013. 40 million records were stolen, costed about 18.5 million multi-state lawsuit. What happened was that the security breach was happened with a classic phishing attack through the Havoc vendor of Target, which got escalated to accessing the point of sale devices used to swipe credit cards. Data from the memory basically conveniently transferred to the hacker servers until they got caught. It's a big one, a classic example. All right. Now that we know who the insiders are, what their motives and what they're after, and looking at a few examples, let's talk about how you can detect the insider threats, right? For detecting the threats, we will need to analyze many data points. You will have to do many monitoring, which we will cover a bit later in the session. Also, it's not just about collecting the data and reviewing them, but it's also about correlating them. So I have given kind of 3 steps process here. Let's talk about motivating factors. Identify the high risk profile. For example, admin users who have access to critical infrastructure or critical data, they are a high risk population. And people, the end user who have access to sensitive data to do their job, day-to-day job, are also considered as one of the motivating factor for us. And another population, most common, is the terminated, or the people who are put on layoff, are also part of the motivating factor right there. And you will have to look at your behavior and HR indicators. Second, try to baseline. You know what your normal is. So without the baseline, most of them are noise. So you will miss a suspicious activity in the ocean of legitimate traffic that is being captured. So we need to pull as much as possible. Also, try to normalize what the right behavior is. And thirdly, collecting not only the technical logs, we need to collect behavior logs, non-technical logs, in order for us to build a big picture. So the key is to correlating all these different data points that we have collected. By monitoring at the network level and the host level, we get a bigger picture on what the user is trying to do. Now, as you can imagine, since we have so many hundreds and thousands of users doing different things across the network in their PCs, we need a tool to correlate all that information to make the intelligent, so that we can only focus on suspicious activity. That's where the SIEM tool comes into picture to create the risk-based alerts. All this information are collected, fed into the SIEM data and correlated so that only suspicious activity can be investigated. Okay. All right. So, what kind of data we can collect? What kind of data will be useful for us to navigate through and finding the suspicious activity? So you can see we have technical control, technical logs and non-technical logs. Try to get the network logs and also get information from the host itself. Active Directory log will give you information about when the user logged in, logged out, how long they were in, and the web log, DNS web content log, gives you where they went and what they are trying to do or search. Email logs, you can see the MDM logs, fire logs. There are many logs that you can collect from the network. For the host, especially for the host, try to collect the antivirus log, because if the malware is installed on the workstation or host, sometimes the antivirus log would be able to give you alert but not necessarily fix them. So by having that, monitoring those logs and correlating that with the different activity, we will be able to mitigate some of the impact that can be caused by insiders. Authentication log, again, another important one, because users are typically challenged to authenticate to a particular endpoint. Every time the users log in, looking at the time when they log in, does it align with their normal working schedule? Those are the important behavior that we can get information out of. Short logs, there are a lot of project collaboration tool that we have in the system. It's a valuable resource of information if they are trying to share some sensitive data there. And what about printers? Don't forget about printers, because if the software avenues are locked down, most often time they look into the printers, copiers, and scanners. So define the normal behavior right there, and then user try to see how many times they're deviating from the norm, and that would be an indicator for you. So about the non-technical logs, you have the background information. You can get a lot of activities, a lot of awful activity that you can collect in terms of their personal record and the performance evaluation, or even having anonymous reporting. Looking at the anonymous reporting incidents, where people usually report the suspicious activity that's going on, is also a valuable source of data that you can use to feed into your SIEM tools. Many organizations now are obligated to have a responsible disclosure type of programs in place. All right. I also want to mention about physical access records. If you have a badging system to enter into your building, you need to find out what time the person is coming in and going out. Is he accessing the building when no one is around? So those are the data also gives you information about the intent of the attackers. Again, collecting all this information is a lot. Imagine thousands of users and doing different type of activities, right? So you have to have the right tool to correlate this information, not looking at them in isolation. So you get a clear picture of what they're trying to do, and also alert on a suspicious activity compared to the normal activity. Let's talk about detecting indicator of compromise. Now that we have identified different data points that we want to log, let's look at them, a few of them actually. So failed logins, right? If the person is trying to log into some account, that you log in for 5 times, 6 times, that might be an indicator. Suspicious network activity, and this is important too. Adding and removing rights without a valid reason in a short period of time and not hours. So why would you do that? And what is prompting you? So those are the things are that needed to be investigated. Use of Tor proxy, installation of any hacking tool that you're not supposed to, and use of printers. Again, we spoke about it earlier. And the most important thing is disabling any security tools without a valid reason. It's a big no-no. It's a good indicator. All right. So what happens now? We have an incident. What can we do now? How can we contain and recover, right? You follow this following process. First, you assess what it is and try to talk about remediation and eradication. And also, you may need to capture forensic evidences in case you have to take a legal actions. And finally, important piece is communication. So, in the incident assessment phase, right, you will need to understand the nature of the incident, which will determine how you will have to respond. Is it an accidental insider, or is it maliciously by attacked by the insider, right? Um, if the data was stolen or damaged, was there any malware installed? Or the data owners alerted? Do you know who's responsible? Did he do it alone or with many? Are they working alone, or many involved, right? Then you will have to understand how did this happen and when did this happen. Once you understand the scope and the context, involve the CSOC team in order to initiate the remediate the remaining process basically. The remediation, right? Remediation, you involve the stakeholders, right? You probably HR or a legal or any data owners that the systems affected involved. You have to involve them, and you want to make sure you preserve the logs and make sure that you remove access rights. And obviously, you have to isolate the system. Can this process be replicated? Also try to find out if this data is publicly available, try to take it down and contact the internet caching provider if it is cached. So you may have to do those kind of remediation. The sooner is the better. You try to remediate and then eradicate to restore the integrity of the network and system, and also validate it if this works. If your if the attack was to affect the integrity of a database, try to initiate the restoration process and make sure you validate before it can go into a business as usual process. Again, for forensic, if you have to involve the legal actions, you may have to make sure that you preserve evidences, maintain chain of custody. It's really important. Then don't forget about the communication, right? At certain jurisdiction, regulators need to be informed about this breach, and also make sure that the staffs are informed clearly early when possible. Otherwise, rumor may spread out, which could be damaging to the organization. All right, let's talk about best practices and countermeasure. Before we get into best practices, I want to get into the tool section. Let's talk about this now, then we will talk about best practices. When we are talking about insider threats, we focus on the behaviors, right? You may be wondering, there are thousands of employees and impossible to monitor every single activities, and there's too much data, both legal and illegal. So how do we segregate malicious intent out of that? This is where all these tool comes into play. You will need a SIEM tool such as Splunk Security, Datadog, or some open source tools for reporting and auditing, which help you understand what type of activity user is conducting and what the status is at and the history of the user on the system. And also, every cloud service providers have similar tools in some shape or form, so you can take advantage of those services. Understanding the context of the insider threats can be really helpful in getting support for your insider threat program. And most importantly, it will be really helpful for the leadership to understand how big the risks are and providing you the budget and resources that you need in developing your insider program and the tools you need. So make sure you implement processes or solution in those each category: prevent, detect, and response. And one last thing I will leave you here on the slide is a reliable backup solution. So the key part of any incident response for an insider attack. Make sure you can restore the data, which means you are not only confident about the integrity of the data once it's restored, and you can go back to BAU process. All right. Let's get into the best practices now. So, again, insider threats are top 10 threat that can occur to any organization. It is important to develop a robust insider program. So there are 20 best practices that's given by the US CERT. So let me talk about, there are 20. I'm not going to review all of them. So just on top few, know and protect your current jewels, right? You have to know what they are so you can spend your time and energy to protect them instead of spending, too thin on protecting other not critical or business critical assets, right? And clearly document enforce policies and controls. This is really important because let me tell you a story. So at one place in a grocery store, the staff stole items from the store. So he got caught and the management fired him. So the staff actually sued the store back and got his job. Not only got his job back and also compensated. You know why? The reason is they did not state clearly that stealing is bad and it will result in termination. So that is why it is really important for us to document clearly and enforce the policies, and it is available everywhere for the employees or the users to see and access. You will have to develop a formalized insider program and also responsible disclosure program. And I'm sure you know about the need to know list privileges, access control, separation of duties. Most important here. All right. The last thing I want to talk about in countermeasure is determine your log volume. Log volume. You don't want to be clogging your data or your SIEM into too much of information, and you are actually thinning out what you wanted to see it. And know your false positives. And make sure that you have you create and maintain your log management policies and procedure, because what's a good use if somebody can go into the log and manipulate the data. So you have to make sure of that too. So final word, if you see something, say something. Make sure you have the appropriate channel for the employee to easily and safely disclose the information, right? I provided some kind of summary here. We talked about what it is, who they are, and how to detect. How can you contain and recover? And what can you do to countermeasure or mitigate these processes? So with that, I will leave you guys for questions.
Hello, Ma. I think there are no questions right now. So that was really a great session. Really, really, I appreciate that. And thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you, Priyam, and everyone. Please stay safe and have a wonderful time.
Okay, thank you so much. So here I Priyam Singh from InfoSec Girls Chandigarh chapter lead, and with today's InfoSec Girls sessions. See you all soon with many more speakers and many more sessions. Till then, stay updated and also follow us on the social media handles.